All right, good afternoon. So I hope everybody had a great JETC so far. You are at the session, Future Directions in Facility Design and Construction, sponsored by the Architectural Practice Committee. I'm your moderator. My name is J.J. Tan. I work for HDR as the Director of Federal Facilities. Probably I saw many familiar faces in the audience know me through the Architecture Practice Committee as the first chair and the founder of the committee. And I have a great panel for you. The purpose of this session is not for them to tell you what's going on, what's coming up. So that's other sessions. So like Tim said, if you want to know what's going on, as far as work, know, and go to other sessions. Really, this session is about, in the future, technically, how we execute the programs coming up. So what we're really looking at in that aspect. I'm going to have my panel introduce themselves, telling some unique story, but I'm going to tell my story first. I know Ed DeVreaux from headquarters is here. Every time I am up at a JETC event, he keeps saying, JJ, you need to tell that story, how you lost your car key in Orlando. That was back in 2013. We had a session. We had a social event for Architecture Practice Committee. I organized a group to go to Disney World, which then took us over there. I drove a couple folks over there. I left my key in the car by accident, and it was hot. I came back, and I couldn't open my car. I was there for an hour and a half. I have my rental car to come in. So that's, everybody remembers that event, the outing, other than having fun at Disney World. But that was it. So I have to my right Scott Wick, the chief engineer, chief engineer from USA headquarters. And Scott has been in the profession for 30 years. Has been in my panel for a number of times. So thank you, Scott, to be here. And he's going to tell the story why he showed up today, and last couple of times he didn't come. Okay.
That's right. And with all due respect to JJ, I just want to say, in reference to Lieutenant General Spellman, I'm not the chief engineer. I'm the chief architect.
Yeah, that's right.
But the day is not over yet. Anything can happen.
Yeah. So as architect, you always say, hey, what call the chief architect and chief engineer? But thanks for the clarification. And
3 stars.
And to Scott's in the middle, Cynthia DeJong, and design project program manager from NAFAC headquarters. I think this is your first time in my panel, am I right? Yeah, so we're looking forward to it. And Tim Sullivan, the slicer interim director, but actually we just call the director of facility engineers AFSAC. And this is, I had the honor to facilitate last year. So this year, second appearance. All right, housekeeping items. We don't really have an interaction type of survey, so you can ignore that if you want, but that will get you to the session. Housekeeping items, take note of exit in the case of emergency. I don't want to hear the phone ringing on you guys, all right? Please turn it off. Make sure Simon is off. The presentation audio recording will be available after the JETC, and will be available until August 30th of 2024. Download your PDH units for AIA, for architects in the room. Since we have 2 esteemed panels of architects, to get your AIA units, you got to go online to check the box, you attend this session, and then at the end, send it over to the headquarters of SCME, then we'll report it as a badge. Thank you for sponsorship. Without our sponsors, this won't be possible. And I just want to give a shout out to the Architecture Practice Committee as well. And this is one of the annual events to bring the industry and government together to have an open dialogue. In fact, this is more about a dialogue where you see the programs upcoming, the issues, the challenges, technically what's best practices out there, comments. please get ready for Q&A. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker, Scott.
You just want me to tell the story?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no. No, that's a good point. I'm gonna. Before he telling his story, as you can see, all his favorite teams is in Washington D.C. All right, and it's very, very real for individual in our profession who I actually grew up there and then still there after 40 years? Am I right?
I think they need to have a number.
Yeah. But that's just to show you have been around. Anyway, and then you see the two golf course. That's one of the reasons he came, by the way. And anytime JETC have a golf course, Scott is guaranteed is going to be there. So anyway, tell your story.
Well, JJ, and actually he was kind of joking at lunch that he's, well, when's the last time you did one of these? I said, Orlando. And I think I stopped coming at St. Louis. And then the next one was in Cleveland. And I said to one of my brethren, I said, why don't you do this one? And that was the last one of these I came to. And I kept thinking sooner or later he was going to figure out that I was only coming to these to, not only, but I was only picking the cities where golf was conducive. For those of you in the area, that's Grand Cypress on the right and Waldorf Astoria. If you have the means, I'd highly recommend them. Those are the two courses. I made the reservation for the courses before I made the reservation for the hotel.
All right. So Cynthia, Clemson's fan, love to run a half marathon. So that's very impressive. So why don't you tell your story about what happens?
So I was training for a half marathon and doing some trail. Well, let me back up for a minute. So one of my former positions was at NAFAC Mid-Atlantic as a facility system safety specialist. So very involved in safety, hazard mitigations. Definitely supporting prevention of slips, trips, and falls. So I was out training, doing some trail running for a half marathon, and up to that point had never fallen, but there was an exposed route and I tripped over it as I was running. Didn't get hurt, I didn't think. But a month or so later, was stepping off a curb and broke my ankle because of the damage that I'd done when I tripped over the route. So kind of ironic, not so funny.
Safety officer. That's
ironic.
All right, team. You can see as Cal Golden Bears. Staycation. That's the we're talking about. That's the best vacation you can have. But really, if you know anything about it, I know Tim told me a couple of times last year as well, the football road trips. He got a good one.
Yeah, so this year, Cal made a bowl game for the first time in a few years and went to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport, and I said, honey, that ain't that far. We're going. And it was going to be in the low 40s, and I'm thinking, that's not that cold. And a night game. But I went to Walmart and said, I'm going to buy some Long Johns. And I asked my wife, do you want some? She's like, nah, I don't need them. Okay. So we're walking up to the stadium, and this was a weird thing. They don't have anything fancy with digital tickets. It was you print out a paper ticket, and then they get you in the stadium. So I was thinking, well, that's not exactly secure. So I want to get there when they first start scanning tickets, which was 2 hours before the game started. So yeah, I'm a fan. So this was going to be like 6 to 7 hours outside in the dark in 40-degree weather. So as we're walking up to the stadium, I'm wearing Long Johns sweats or Long Johns jeans, a sweatshirt, a jacket, and a hat. And a police officer waves me over. He goes, "What part of California is Cal in?" I go, kind of the middle part. He goes, yeah, because I see all these people walking up like not dressed for the weather. And I'm like, is he talking about us? So we get into the stadium, and my wife gets a hot chocolate. It's probably a smart thing to do. I get a cold beer. And I'm sitting there in the stadium going, I'm so cold. I'm like, this was not a good idea. And she brought a blanket, and she's like, "Do you want a blanket?" Nah, I don't need one. Well, yeah, I did. So at the end of the game, we lost, and I don't know if there's any Texas Tech fans. Maybe you can explain why they throw tortillas during the game, because I don't get it. I still don't understand that. But anyway, so after the game, Cal lost, and they're rolling out the stuff to the trophy presentation, and she goes, "Do you want to see this?" I'm like, "No, they lost." She goes, "Get me to the car." So get me to the car. So that was the quickest walk ever. And she's like, "Just get me to the car and get the heater on."
So Tim learned his lesson. So next time you want to travel for football games, come with him. So he's going to tell you how to prepare and have fun, and maybe how to deal with losses. Anyway,
then we went to the Sugar Bowl and watched Texas lose, but it was indoors.
Okay, well, back to serious business now, and we're going to introduce Scott to come up to the podium to talk about the USAID program as regards to the technical challenges we're facing.
You bet. Thank you, JJ. So real quick, we made a pact at lunch to kind of go through our stuff quickly, because we really want to hear more what questions you all have. And for those of you in the back, as always, there's plenty of seats up front. I know. So let's see who sticks to that, and because we really do want to hear what you all want to talk about more than us. Real quick, not to belay things too badly, but who's in the room here? How many of you work for NAVFAC, AFCAC? Raise them up if you're a service provider, if you work for the government. Okay. All right, down. Raise them up if you work for an A&E, a contractor, a vendor. You're an industry type folk. All right, so it's kind of half and half-ish. Who else is in the room? How many of you are here just for CEUs and you aren't even listening to what I'm saying? Is there anybody? Really? A little bit of honesty. We'll meet after. We'll go to the next one together. It'll be great, I promise. All right, fantastic. This is not, what we're going to talk about here is essentially it's very aspirational in nature, so let's get started here. So this slide's a little busy, and it's a good slide if you know the process. It's not as great a slide if you don't. We're all dealing with, the biggest thing in DoD right now is electrification. Okay, period. That is largely the result of the president's last executive orders that he signed out. Don't ask me the numbers. I don't even try to memorize them anymore. And what this is a diagram of essentially how the process by which an executive order finally finds its way into project level implementation. Okay, say that with me now. Project implementation. Thank you. Patronizing me helps a lot. So essentially, whenever an executive order comes out, we get this wave of calls of, hey, I want to definitely do what's right for this executive order. What do I need to do? I'm going to start doing, for example, the executive order may say 50% charging stations for all spaces for new facilities. Problem is, and we want to start doing that right away. Well, that's great, and I certainly don't want to assuage any motivation to comply with law, but what has to happen first is that the executive orders are supposed to be applied to an entire portfolio, as I think many of you should know, but may not. And then each of the services, or actually each of the government entities, whether they're a service or not, then takes that, looks at their entire portfolio and determines how many, for example, how many spaces they need to do now to get to 30% or 60% or whatever it is by that time frame at the end, okay? So, and then each of the services puts out their own policy that sort of corresponds to that executive order, and then there may even be a third level of implementation guidance that's a lot more close to criteria as opposed to policy, if you understand the difference. So that's what this is essentially trying to document here. So if the page down button was working, you would see that that's not working at all. Let's try this again. Where's page down? So let's try it. Nope, that's not working either. That will stop it. Yes. All right. Very good. All right. So this is what DoD came out with just over a year ago. I think it was February or March, and this is DoD's electrification policy. And then each of the services followed suit. I'm not going to go through each of these bullets. But obviously, there's Air Force, there's Navy, and there's Army, which for some reason, I put these in reverse order. We came out with ours like maybe 6 weeks after the DoD policy. The other services, as you would expect, followed suit at much more established increments, is how we'll politely put it. But
A deliberate pace.
yeah, it's all good. So that's good. I like that. Was a good one. So again, I'm not going to go through each of these bullets, but essentially the real variations in each of these three policies is essentially the means by which to get out of doing these policies, or their application to new construction versus SRM type work. So for the specifics of each service, I recommend you actually read them. But the largest goal, there's been sessions on this throughout the week, but the largest goal is to electrify everything. There are obviously caveats for northern regions and so forth and so on, and contingency type operations, but the largest part of this is that we're all trying to electrify. I hope you already know that, but if not, there you go. So again, here's our USACE, now specific to USACE. Here's our ECB on that. Again, it talks about what projects have to implement it, how far along a project could be in order to avoid this policy, but that was over a year ago. So at this point, everything in Milcon should be following this policy. And if anyone tells you differently, they're not only lying, they're not even doing it very well, for the record. So there you go. The Army has taken a step back on SRM because there were a lot of sort of preventive costs to some of the SRM projects. So it kind of boils it down to more of a, if you can do it without sacrificing mission kind of thing. So there you go. All right, so again, specific to the Army only is USACE Mass Timber ECB 2023-14. I've had 2 congressional inquiries on this. I just went to a session yesterday on this. And I'd like to talk about this one a little more in depth than the others. How many of you who work for a design entity or a construction entity, how many of you would say that mass timber is something you consider as a design option as part of your standard operating procedure? Is there anyone in the room that would raise your hand and honestly tell me that you actually consider mass timber as an option? I saw 2 people put their hand up. Sir, you and I will go have drinks later. All right, there's 3. Okay, a little bit better. So this is really what we're trying to do. I'm not saying whether this is right or wrong. We can have conversations about this during the open session. But the administration, the current administration and Congress don't agree on much. But they do believe that carbon reduction is the main thing that we're trying to accomplish. And they also believe that mass timber is a tool that the industry should be pushing and using more often. I've had 3 congressional inquiries on this in the last 8 years. USACE, I'm proud to say, has done 5 cross-laminated timber projects in those 8 years that were all privatized and we had absolutely nothing to do with. And now we have 2 mass timber projects that we were forced to do by Congress. So in the 10 years since we first created the spec, the Unified Facilities Guide spec for mass timber, it has been used 0, nada, not even 1 time for cross-laminated timber. And in talking with a lot of our districts, and I'm sure a lot of your organizations, as I can clearly see, it's not even something people are considering at this point. So I know a lot of you are going to come up to me. A gentleman came up to me yesterday and said, well, aren't you worried about clear cutting forests? Aren't you worried about taking CO2 out of the air? I think with 7 projects in the last 12 years, I feel confident that the forest industry is going to remain vibrant and solid in our country. So I hope that each of you, I hope the services, this is being incorporated into 1-200-02, UFC 1-200-02 as we speak. I don't know that the other services will follow us in this. I hope they will. But this is something unique to USACE, and I hope you'll help us get there. I think that's about it for me, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, Dr. Sullivan just participated in a panel on this before lunch. We have, what is it, a dozen? I think it's 11 projects that are either OTA or NDAA directed pilot projects for sustainable materials. This is the list. The ones obviously in green are the ones that the Army Corps is in charge of. We're doing 3 of our own, I think, and 2, 3 for the Air Force. I think it's 1. Actually, it's only 1 for you all. Is that right?
Well, the OTs, you're doing
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
And then the Patrick one is.
That's right,
Is a
the other one,
different,
yeah.
That's a different pilot.
So again, these are projects that we're trying to pilot new materials that we haven't used. Low carbon concrete. We haven't ventured into low carbon steel yet, but hopefully that will be forthcoming. The ECB that I just showed you on the last slide is being revised as we speak to include both those items as well. So again, this is this is very aspirational. And I think if you talk to any of our districts, they may or may not even know this exists, even though it's been 6 or 7 months. Senator Graham's office knows about it because they phoned us and asked about it. But anyway, this is what we're trying to accomplish. This is where we're trying to head. Again, I'm not saying that everything that we do is going to be mass timber, but we do think this is a viable option. We hope you'll help us get there. JJ?
All right. Okay, so next, you're going to talk about the barracks.
I can. If you want.
Yeah. Why don't you?
Oh,
why
I
don't-
forgot about those.
you
Oh, I
gotta-
forgot about those
So
slides. Well,
Sky
these
is
are-
so into
yeah.
mass timber. We do have some others.
Yeah, these are just examples of the projects to which I was speaking. This is JBLM. This is the low carbon concrete project. This is another one. This is a mass timber barracks that's actually, I think this one just got awarded, and almost 17 to 26%. I can't remember what the number was, but it was well below budget. So if Mike McAndrews is in the audience, we're not as expensive as the chief of NAFAC was saying you think we are. Again, JBLM, Mike and I go back. He'll get me later. This is the JBLM mass timber project. This one's not as far along, but it's nearing 100%, and I think that's it. Oh yeah, and this is an SRM project, I think at Fort Liberty, yeah, and this one's just getting off the ground as well. I think this one's about 35%. Again, all of these are either OTA or NDAA directed projects at this point. This is not something our districts are embracing yet. I hope if there's anyone from a inside the Beltway perspective, I'd really like to see us do more of these test projects. We have 55 districts in the Corps of Engineers, and we're doing 3 test projects. I don't think that's going to get us the overall traction we're hoping for. So if there's anybody who has that kind of influence, I hope you'll put a plug in.
Yeah.
I think that's
So I think next is Cynthia. What Scott mentioned about mass timber and quality of life apply to all services. We'll purposely to have each services talk about some specialties of that unique, but we're not trying to repeat ourselves, so that what Scott mentioned is applied across the board. Cynthia.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon, everybody. Glad to see everyone. I'm going to be talking about a few things today, all in support of our NAFAC Strategic Priority 1, accelerating execution performance. Most of these topics deal more with, here I'll advance the slide, more with MILCON, in Blue Navy McCon in particular, but really we're trying to accelerate all execution. So although I'm speaking more to McCon, we're applying this to our SRM workload too, especially our centrally managed program projects or large specials. NAFAC has recently gone through a reorganization, which is also in support of improving performance to plan. And so I don't have a slide about our reorganization. It's more internal. But some of those changes also enable the process changes that I'm about to go through for the McCon process. For those familiar with McCon projects, that we execute. You're probably familiar with our budget PRI process that we currently use, our SMIG PRI, budget PRI Project Readiness Index. A little history, though, going back to prior to 2020, we had a PRI 0, a PRI 1, a PRI 2. These are gates, for assessing the quality of the deliverables. PRI 0, 1 are planning deliverables and products, and our PRI 2 is our preliminary design. Between each of those phases, though, there was a 4 to 6 months downtime as we waited, for our resource sponsor, CNIC OpNav, to review the projects and assess, okay, are these going to move forward or not? And there was a lot of projects, not unusual to have like 600 projects in the project determination phase, and then it gradually gets down to about 20 to 40 projects that actually make it to design and construction. And so our initiative here is to try to reduce some of the downtime, reduce the number of projects that we're working on early on. We have limited resources, limited O&M in resources to fund the planning efforts. So we're trying to reduce the number of projects to be able to provide quality planning products for fewer projects. And so in 2022, we changed our process and removed one of those stoppages between the PRI 1 and PRI 2 and renamed our process. So we are working right now on the SMIG PRI and budget PRI, but again, still one 4 to 6 month stoppage time. And so what we're trying to do and what we've proposed, we're still working out the details, but moving forward, we are eliminating the SMIG PRI, the red block there, review by the SMIG and OpNav. The new process will still have the same efforts, we'll have project determination, but we're limiting the amount of efforts required for the project determination. We've coordinated that with CNIC and OpNav, trying to maximize, again, the use of our O&M funding and identifying the requirements. Probably common to all the services, but right now, the Navy has more requirements than funding, so we're trying to align with the Shore CFT, cross-functional team, in identifying what the true requirements are and prioritizing those. And so the efforts that we want to spend are on those projects that are the high priority. So minimizing what is provided during the project determination. Instead of having, the stoppages in the workflow, we've all jointly agreed that we'll provide a new type of document called a requirements data sheet as part of the project determination, and that will be reviewed at the CNIC WO level. It'll go through a gauntlet of review by the IMIG installation Mission Integration Group, the SMIG, the Region Mission Integration Group, then the Shore Mission Integration Group, and then finally by the Shore CFT. And they will select the projects that move forward. And at that point, we'll start project development. That's when the true planning will start. And again, this is kind of new. We're working out the details, but we hope to have more of an integrated team at that point, engaging the design technical team, the cost engineers in the planning efforts. Currently, we do not perform planning charrettes, but moving forward, we will have planning charrettes during the project development phase. Also, once we get to substantially complete planning and the preliminary design starts, we currently execute 15% design for our program budget final DD 1391, and we're changing that to 35%, so we'll have more design maturity to back the cost for the DD 1391. Again, more to follow on that. One other thing, you'll see there's kind of a gap between the end of the budget PRI and the start of final design when we receive final design authority. In working with OpNav and CNIC, we have an agreement that we'll be able to get an earlier final design authority so that when we finish project development, we can roll right into final design. So again, really trying to improve our performance and remove some of those stoppages and eliminate that gap between the end of project development and the start of final design. I think I've pretty much covered all of this. Again, trying to minimize handoffs as well by eliminating the stops. Full implementation, I didn't cover that. So right now, all of our projects are in various states of the current budget PRI process. And so we analyzed what can we do now to implement this new process, having potential mini planning charrettes. Most of the projects are beyond the point of being able to implement. So our plan is to fully implement this fall when the FY30 projects are issued. So more to follow. Again, we're still working out a lot of the details on how we're going to do this, and writing new NAVFAC business process management documents, BPMSs, to cover the new process. I want to speak a little bit about alternate construction methods. Again, we don't have enough money to fund all of the requirements. And so CNIC recently came out with a CNIC note that states alternate construction methods must be considered first. So before a project becomes a project, during the project determination phase, looking at alternate methods, TFS, modular construction. Can a requirement be met by use of equipment? So those are considerations that need to be made during the project development phase. If a project does move forward during project development, we also want to look at viable alternate construction methods. So we're in the process of developing a vectorgram to provide tools to our planners and designers, in-house and contracted, to help make those decisions with respect to alternate construction methods. So tension fabric structures is one of those methods that we are looking at. OpNav also has directed that we pilot some projects, so we're in the process of piloting 4 hangars with using TFS. And I've got a slide, I won't go through, but there's another slide at the end that talks about some of the weather events. So we do have some considerations about the use of TFS, and we have been updating our criteria based on appropriate use of TFS, when to use it and when not to use it. Modular construction, it means different things to different people. So we are looking at modular construction, prefabricated PMEBs, also as a way to shorten time frames, maybe reduce costs, and help improve our execution timelines. So really for us, at this time, we're looking for help from the industry as far as how to appropriately use alternate construction methods, modular construction, what is the best approach. We've identified considerations and the trade-offs
advantages and trade-offs. But again, we're really looking for help from the industry in how to appropriately execute using modular construction. Child Development Center. So standardization right now, NAFAC, we have standard facility types and we have criteria for each standard facility type, RFP templates and UFCs for those facility types, one being Child Development Center. But we are looking at developing an actual standard design, again, with expectation that we may see some schedule and cost savings, but also standardizing the facility so that when you go to a CDC at Norfolk Naval Station or you go to Hawaii, it'll be the same facility, some branding. We have been pursuing that with some industry engagement. We do have a planned roundtable with industry child care providers to see how do they, provide their facilities, the designs, the branding from place to place. We don't have that a time set up. We're working through that right now. We have reached out to a number of industry members to get feedback with respect to how to better build, design, and construct our CDCs in a standard fashion, and gotten some really good feedback from them. We also are conducting, we have CDCs between FY26 and FY28, different locations, regions, but we are looking at bundling or, taking multiple CDCs and contracting them as one as an efficiency as well. And design charrette, we're looking at performing a design charrette to better determine what the standard design should be moving forward. And probably, multiple size CDCs, small, medium, and large. So with that, this is just information on the weather events that we've analyzed for performance of tension fabric structures.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia. Our last speaker is Dr. Solomon, representing AFSAC.
Okay, I'm going to talk about some of the things going on in the Air Force that are really driving where we're going to be going with design and construction in the near future and quite possibly long term. So you may have heard about re-optimizing for great power competition. This is really kind of the normal evolution within the Air Force and the armed forces in general. So we changed how we were organized and operated after the end of the Cold War. We did the same thing after 9/11, and now we're at a point where we need to do that again because of the growing threat from a near-peer competitor. So there's a lot that's been discussed about this in the media. Secretary Kendall went out at AFA and talked about it, and a lot of discussion about how we're talking about reorganizing, and then there's been some documents published. If you read through those documents, none of them say anything about this is how we're going to build facilities or we're going to build them differently or anything like that. It is intended that AFCEC and the Air Force Installation and Mission Support Center will stay the way they are and where they are. But if you do read through those documents, you'll see words like agile, adaptive, speed, and complexity, which are not necessarily words you associate with how we procure construction services, except maybe complex. So we do need to go faster, and we need to think about doing things differently. And if you look at what we need to do in the Pacific Theater, we don't have the time or money to do it when we need to do it. So there's a real drive to contemplate doing things such as, do we need a 50-year facility or do we need a 25-year facility? How long should we have our airfields last? Do we build them to last 70 years or less? So are we going to start looking for criteria waivers to the UFC program so we can get things built faster and cheaper? So those are the types of discussions we're having, so we can get things put out there faster to meet the threat. Because if we go by our traditional methods, we're going to be way late, and we can't afford it. We certainly can't afford to harden everything out there. So that's what's really shaping where we're going these days. And along the same lines, last year in May, Typhoon Maiwar hit Anderson, damaged about 500 facilities. So far, we spent $300 million. Not exactly repairing those facilities. A lot of it has been making them weather tight, just so they won't get worse. So putting a lot of tarps on facilities, fixing the HVAC system so they're not going to just sort of rot out before we can get them properly fixed. That $300 million was taken out of Hyde. There was no storm supplemental for this, and that's partially because there's no congressional delegation from Guam lobbying for this, which is unfortunate. So that is a real challenge for us. That has siphoned money away from our other needs that we have. But our intention is to rebuild more with more redundancy, resiliency, and to build back better. So you see at the bottom, it's like a $9.7+ billion effort, mixture of FSRM and MILCON. That's not really the cost to rebuild what was damaged. That's in there, but a lot of it is also to build in redundancies, to build in resiliency, and to make things that we build back more resilient to either natural phenomenon or enemy attack. So that's the overall philosophy with how we're approaching what we want to do at Anderson. Long haul ahead, and of course, no one's promised us the funding, but this is what we're asking for at this time. So pictorially, this is what it looks like, and one of the key things is you'll see the word hardened here for some of the airfield, but we're not looking to harden every single structure. Again, we can't afford to do that, and it's not really worthwhile to do that based on the threat. We're looking to do things like have alternate power sources, disperse power sources, make them more resilient, make them more recoverable. So if there is a natural disaster, we can get the water system back on faster. We can get the power back on faster. So it's not where, okay, we've got family, because this is an accompanied tour. We have families out there, they have no power, no water for 2 weeks. That's unacceptable. So how can we get things going faster and recover more quickly? So that's sort of a new concept for the island. That's what we're looking to do. And that's how our intention is as we go forward. And it really melds in with the reoptimization efforts as well. Another thing is Spaceport of the Future. So this is an interesting initiative. So the spaceports have seen a 200% increase in launches since 2020. And again, there's great pressure to ensure we have access to space, and there's a lot of competition to get assets into space with near-peer competitors. And the Space Force has a direct line to the Office of Management and Budget, and they got $1.3 billion in the program, and we didn't know about it. So that was, hey, what do you know? And we had some interesting initial conversations with them when we first found out about this. And really, it was the operators had advocated for this and gotten the fund. They were the dog who caught the car. Okay, they got the money, and we looked at it, and there's a CE officer on the Space Force staff who called us and said, oh my God, what are we going to do? These projects aren't ready, right? So we had to work with them closely and bring in the Corps of Engineers to try and line up, let's get these projects ready, put them in the deliberate process, which is frustrating to the operators because we need it now, right? We need it now. And we understand that, but we have to be deliberate because the last thing we want to do is go too fast and not be able to deliver because we're not ready, and we award a contract that's ill-defined, and we've all lived that dream. But in general, what they're looking to do is they're looking to supply infrastructure for commercial launch. Now, here in Florida, there's a more robust commercial launch existing already than there is in Vandenberg. So they're looking to here, it's more an FSRM solution to revitalize existing infrastructure. I see, I move my hands around, I keep hitting the mic.
Yeah, lunch is starting.
So I need to just, put my hands behind my back. Okay, so here in Florida, it's more of an FSRM solution. In Vandenberg, there isn't as much commercial launch, so it's more MILCON solution. But in both cases, they are looking to increase the infrastructure available for commercial launch, predominantly. And there is a program management office that was set up within AFI-MSC Detachment 1. If you're familiar, it's similar to what we have out in Hawaii and Germany, executing the MILCON programs. And we work with them to get this executed. So this is really just getting kicked off now. They do have funding aligned for a lot of this, and I will also say that $1.3 billion, that is just the beginning. They need a lot more money than that. I can't tell you what they're going to get, but this is a very important program, so I'm certain they'll get much more in the future. But we shall see what it will be, but I'm confident it will be significantly more than that going forward. And it wouldn't be a briefing this week without talking about electrification. So, Scott has said that all these things are about how to get out of it, and that just makes me sad, because that's not the intent at all. I think there are a lot of people who figure, well, I'm just going to ask for an exemption or waiver, and my response has been, you ain't going to get it. This is a different program. This is an administration priority, and it's a strategic imperative for the Air Force, at least, to make this happen. So unless there is a mission reason why you can't do it, you're not going to get a waiver or exception. You're going to have to do it. And
especially on the MILCON side.
Yeah, on the MILCON side, there's, I wouldn't say no excuse, because I have heard some things where, certain electric components may interfere with pieces of equipment. Okay, well, shield it. Well, so we have to go through those whole logic trains to make sure. But if it's just, hey, this is going to cost more money and take more time, well, figure it out. That's going to be the answer. And other people discuss, this has been really institutionalized by the DOE's new rules that have come out, and they're going to be a lot more stringent than we are. So we really don't have a choice here. So I don't expect that many exceptions to be granted. So people really just need to get on the bus and ride with us and get this done. So with that, we have some time for questions.
That's right. We have about 15 minutes, actually 13 minutes, and one of the reasons I have this session is for the industry to provide feedback and comments or recommendations or questions. So the floor is open for you. If you don't mind to step up to the microphone to bring your questions up for our panel. Okay.
If nobody asked a question,
Yeah.
I'm just going to tell you about my golf rounds. So, one was really good, one was not
All right,
so
we
good.
get
there you go.
somebody
I didn't
lined
have
up.
to do it.
Yeah, icebreaker.
All right, Tim Devine, HDR. Scott, mass timber, it seems like a very applicable product. One of the challenges we hear and see with it is in the South. It's termites. Termites like cellulose, and you have to lift them off the ground. So have you guys looked at studies about how to use mass timber that floats?
So I'm not an expert on mass timber, and if you read the ECB, it harkens everything back to life cycle cost analysis. It's the best way to sort of choose which structural system you go with. I would not expect a particularly large amount of embrace in the South or the Southwest. We understand this is a locality-driven technology, at least right now. But again, the main goal of the ECB is to just get people thinking about it, considering it. When you live in, we have JBLM, which is one of the most active installations in the Army portfolio, and even they, who are the kings of the timber industry, our Seattle district, I asked them flat out, are you guys considering this? And no. Well, why not? We just don't. I said, why not? And they said, Scott, we build in concrete and steel. What do you want me to say? And I said, well, not that. But that's, we're just trying, I appreciate vividly that there are going to be localities that are just not ready to take this on. But we hope that the ones that will at least make it part of the toolbox.
Yeah.
I'll follow up. Sorry.
Here, you were so close.
HDR is currently working on one of the pilot projects for the F-35s.
Good.
And one of the things that cross-laminated timber is good for it, and I think we're proposing it, is decking.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very good, longer spans. It solves a lot of problems and does some acoustics that are very valuable. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for it. We just
Agreed.
haven't really considered it very highly. I think we need to think more about that.
When you really start to break people down, you really start to ask them why not, and well, it's this, and well, there's this problem, well, it's that problem. I appreciate we're not going to start building hangars out of mass timber, but every hangar comes with an admin building off to one side.
Yes.
It's usually less than the talk yesterday was, well, you all haven't solved the progressive collapse problem.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to do progressive collapse for anything under 3 stories.
Yeah.
How many of us, there's only like two buildings on every base that's over 3 stories, and they're all barracks. So this is not, there's plenty of CDCs that are coming that are never more than 1 story. There's headquarters buildings that are almost never more than 2. There's plenty of ways that we can start to use
There's a lot of admin space that we do that could utilize them. Again, most of the ones, at least for me, are all in the southeast, which make it a little bit more challenging.
Absolutely.
But I think those are definitely possible. Some of the smaller hangars even can. We're having an issue with
We're
the
doing
admin
drones, much
because
smaller spaces.
It's
Absolutely.
too big.
There's
but,
ways to do this.
Yeah.
The
Thanks,
code,
Tim.
I just read that the code is now 18 stories. 18 stories is the limit for IBC. I would not want to go into that building. I'm not going to lie to you, but it can be done.
Hi there. Hi, everybody. I'm Rebecca from AICE, is an Italian AE. So I'm always interested in my standard question, what about OCONUS and some of the ramifications, in particular, just thinking about these alternate structuring methods. For example, ATFP, you trumped my card. I wasn't going to talk about progressive collapse, but ATFP for barracks and timber, which could be a little bit more complex, or hangars and the TFS structures, and in particular, OCONUS and the ATFP requirements. And that was one part of it. And then I had a second.
So I'll provide a partial answer at least. So the alternate construction methods do still have to meet our criteria.
Right.
So if TFS, for example, we are changing our criteria, but there are still considerations like the region, the climate, insulation is a challenge. Modular construction, similar.
We've been using that we used that all over the BRAC year from 2006 to 2012. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
We again, no offense, you seem very lovely. But Cynthia is 100% right. Each of these materials can work under the parameters of the UFC.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
No, I don't. I'm not, absolutely not saying that.
They're not going to work for everything. We're not going
Right.
to give you. We're not going to say, oh well, we're willing to
Absolutely.
forego force protection so you can use mass timber. That's not going to happen.
Certainly.
But
In
there
fact.
are opportunities, good opportunities
Yes.
for new materials to be used.
well, and the ATFP requirements are determined locally.
Agreed.
you know, by the threat working group of the installation. So
Yeah.
that's going to, obviously, we're not going to necessarily build a mass timber facility on the perimeter of the installation if there's a high threat.
Yes.
But if you build it somewhere where it's a lower threat, you know, that's
Certainly,
possible.
with some standoff distances, et
Right.
cetera, yeah.
So I'll go you one better. How many of you know that since 2018, you don't have to do force protection if you're under 3 stories? Does everybody know that? If you meet the standoff distances, you don't have to do any force, you don't have to build anything, no additional structural.
Is that CONUS or OCONUS? Because there's a
That's-
UCOM
that's
op order
CONUS.
that still
is CONUS, and
enforces,
you did
exactly.
Say OCONUS.
Peace and love.
But she's right, she did say OCONUS. But for the record, CONUS, if you meet the standoff distances, you don't actually have to do any additional structural addition.
Exactly. I had the caveat. I trumped you.
You're right, she's right.
I do want to, I mentioned it before, NAVFAC is developing a vectogram that is, lays out some guidance for our in-house staff, planners and designers, as well as our AEs executing our work. And it will have some appendices that have some lessons learned on our hangars, other types of facilities. But again, we are looking for feedback. We're rolling this out with some urgency to get it out as a tool for everyone to start using and looking at and determining if an alternate construction methodology is appropriate for the specific project, whether it be CONUS or OCONUS. But definitely need feedback from the industry as far as the good and the bad.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you much. The second part of my question, if I'm not, do I have a line? Okay.
It's only one customer,
Okay.
one question per customer.
Oh, there's only one question per customer? Okay. Again, regarding OCONUS and the standards and initiatives that are being used, in particular for the electrification and some of the, I talked about this yesterday in one of the other sessions, some of the challenges that there are with, for example, in Italy, where I am, so doing the conversion to, so that kind of issue, yeah.
So we are working on, NAVFAC is working on
Yes.
some additional guidance for clarification. For example, like within the context of NAVFAC, we have categories of work to help delineate the various types of projects, categories 1, 2, 3, 4. Anything with design is a category 1, 2 project. And is executed by planning, design, and construction director. And if it's category 3, 4, which is more on the maintenance and minor repair,
Yes.
that would be executed by public works director. I make that distinction because in our guidance for the electrification, we are clarifying that if it's a Cat 3, 4, we do a lot of replacement in kind. It would be a Cat 3, 4 level of effort. That doesn't trigger the electrification, whereas system replacement, upgrades, anything that would require design, engineering, would be a Cat 1, 2 project, and that would require the electrification.
Yes, ma'am.
So again, trying to provide some clarification to the field,
Yes.
whether it's CONUS or OCONUS. And since the MILCONs are executed within NAVFAC, we centralize execution of MILCONs back to the Echelon 3's NAVFAC PAC in Atlantic. So in Italy, that's primarily the SRM workload. So
Right.
more the Cat 2, a lot of the Cat 3, 4 work.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. Thanks. I don't think I have a line. Oh, I have a line. Okay. Thanks.
Hey, my name's Wallace Smith with Garver Multidiscipline A&E. At the Fort Worth District Industry Day, Southwest Division headquarters had a PowerPoint, a slide regarding CMMC. So I'm just kind of asking on behalf of all A&Es. And their slide was no CMMC level 1, 2, or 3 rating by October 1, 2025. That's it. You're not eligible for a contract under DOD. Like on PowerPoint slides up there. Does that jive with what you people up on this panel think you know? Anyone want to take a stab at that? I mean, this is PowerPoint slides from Southwest Division headquarters.
And I'm sorry, say again?
So CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model, right, certification. So on the A&Es in this room, that's the right now you have to have a NIST score, right? That's part of the contract award right now.
Right.
Well, the next evolution of that apparently is, a CMMC rating of 1, 2, or 3, and you have to be level 2 if you're going to deal with any CUI, controlled unclassified information.
Sure.
But it was very specific and very, very in your face. Hey, you guys need to be working on this. All of you A&Es, no rating October 1, 2025. You will not be eligible for a contract anywhere. Covering Army, Air Force, Navy, all of it.
JJ, he's asking a non-technical question. Get him. So I really want to give you an answer, but that is honestly and sincerely, that is not, I think, any of our areas of expertise.
No, I've heard of the requirement, but I'm not tracking
as
it.
have I. Let me just say that we have to, we need our industry partners as much as you need us.
Would you rather talk about your golf game?
I would love to. But I don't want to misspeak, and I have a tendency to do that, and I definitely don't want to do it with 2 of my ex-bosses in the audience. One of them left, though. I think we're good. No, I don't want to tell you don't worry about it, because I think you should, but I think they're trying to put a mark on the wall for you there, and Mr. Major General Peabody, my old boss, wants to help me here.
The draft final rule was out in February. It is not yet finalized.
Yeah.
It's projected to be finalized in August. Public information indicates that the rule will start going into effect in a phased approach, and I'm not sure how long that is going to take, in early 2025. Whether that's first quarter FY or calendar year, I don't know. But it is coming, and if we're not all serious about it, we're going to be caught. Hands down, and we won't, at some point you won't be able to compete. I can't tell you whether the Southwest Division slide is the point now.
And let me just say, from a USACE perspective, they accomplished their mission in putting the fear of God into you.
Yeah, they were quite effective. They were quite effective.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for our panel, and please give a round of applause for our panel.